Welcome back. The world's first ever womb transplant has been hailed as a medical milestone, but it's also generated a row over whether the procedure can ever be done successfully. The highly complicated operation was carried out on a 26-year-old woman in Saudi Arabia. British doctors who are working in the same area welcomed the breakthrough, calling it very exciting. But some doctors say the operation is dangerous and may have raised false hopes. After 3 months, the transplanted womb had to be removed. Our Home Affairs editor, Mark Easton, has this.
The dream is that this transplant will allow women with damaged wombs to become pregnant and give birth to their own child. Conventional infertility treatments, where eggs are fertilized outside the uterus, are useless for at least 15,000 women in the UK whose wombs have been damaged, often through illness. One doctor who works in this area believes that with another £500,000 of funding, he'll be ready to carry out a similar transplant in the UK within 3 years, and he has no doubts about the rights and wrongs of his research.
It's a basic human desire, need, which not everybody, but many of us have, which is to procreate. And that's a desire which is very strong. And this is a procedure which has the capacity to perhaps make that happen for a group of people currently it can't happen for.
But while the dream of a womb transplant is attractive, the reality is difficult and dangerous. The uterus has a very complex blood supply, with 6 arteries feeding the organ. The Saudi transplant involved the cervix, where 4 of the arteries join the womb, but excluded the ovaries. Surgery is complicated because the relatively small blood vessels are difficult to join and likely to clot. In this case, the transplant initially worked, with hormones used to thicken the walls of the womb, making a pregnancy theoretically possible. Then, after 99 days, the uterus had to be removed after clots developed in the blood vessels. Those involved in the operation point out that the organ itself was not rejected. But many doctors say that this transplant involves all the risks of any major surgery, but in the end is not life-saving. They worry about the amount of drugs that will be needed to stop the new uterus being rejected by the patient's body, and they fear that hopes are being raised that cannot be met.
It is subjecting a woman to a major surgical procedure, and the knowledge that is unlikely to be successful is both irresponsible and unethical. In addition, the administration of immunosuppressive drugs on a long-term basis can have very serious side effects and can only be justified for life-saving transplants.
Despite this, doctors have already reported inquiries today from patients who want to know more. So, whatever the risks, this area of medical research is unlikely to go away.
Well, Dr. Mohamed Taranissi, director of the Assisted Reproduction and Gynecology Centre, is in central London. Dr. Taranissi, this transplant failed after 3 months. Surely that makes it irresponsible.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think it is very exciting to have this kind of treatment available to people, but before we start raising hopes and expectations, we need to realize that this particular case was not successful, so we're still quite a long way of perfecting this kind of approach. We need to overcome problems of rejection, problems of vascularity, and so on. And secondly, even if it is perfected as a technique, where are you going to get the donors from? And talking about getting uterus that has been taken through hysterectomies, I don't think this is the way forward, because uterus are being removed because they have problems in them. So there's a lot of logistic issues here as well.
And is there any reason to believe that even if you could transplant a uterus successfully, that a woman would be able to have a child as a result?
Well, that's, as I said, we're quite a long way of having this being put to people as an option. Okay, there are patients who need this kind of approach, but is it available? And is it going to be available? We need to be sort of really, really very careful when we put these issues to people.
And do you think we'll see this in our lifetime?
I don't think it's going to be in our lifetime. This is just one case, and we don't know the ins and outs of exactly what was happening there. But it is an area that needs to be investigated, and I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetime.
But you disagree, by the sound of it, with Lord Winston, who this morning said this was a total failure.
I don't think you can say it's a total failure, because they've managed to transplant the uterus, and according to the report, it was functional for about 3 months. So It's not a complete failure, but it's a step in the right direction. But it's still quite a long way before we can say, yes, we know how to do it, and yes, we can offer it to people in a responsible way.
Dr. Taranissi, thank you very much indeed. You're watching Channel 4 News. Our main